So we've gotten quite a bit further on the Blazer K5. We ended up patching it in back here to get the right body contour. We don't have anything ground yet, so you're just still seeing the spot welds. We'll come back and fill in each spot weld. Usually you want to skip maybe 4 or 6 inches so you don't get too hot and start warping the metal. Just getting the rest of this floor brace tied in. We got the floor extension panel here and then the lower kick panel. We had to replace both of those, and then this floor brace, cab brace, goes inside of the rocker box. And there's extra welds onto the rocker box, or torsion box is another name for them. I think that's maybe the correct name. And then there's this guide in here for your body mount bolt. So we had to get all that in, and then they also have an extra plate to just give you more of that floor strength we were talking about. So we're going to get this welded in there, just got that guide welded in. Got a couple little tacks I need to finish welding this to the torsion box. And then we'll weld this in. Then our floor pan here is what we'll probably be working on next, getting ready to set that in there. We ran into another potential issue with these rockers that I haven't totally found the answer to online. But you can see, actually here, do you want to come to the other side real quick? You can see the last set of rockers that were replaced. Maybe I was a little too hard on the guy that replaced them, because you can see these are indented in, and I said I don't like that body line at all. Well, what I've found is, like on the pickup, the Blazer is probably a little bit different, because on the Blazer here, the floor is a different body line at the very back here. And that's what we had to cut off on that floor extension piece. Well, where this torsion box meets the back here, if you want this to be tight against the torsion box, the rocker panel sits in further than I'd like it. It sits in almost a 1/2 inch. So what we're going to do on this other side, now that I fit the new ones on, what we're going to do on this side is try to fix that the right way, which I'm not sure there is a right way. There's a bunch of different ways, but we're going to try to do it the way that we think is the rightest. But if you see this here, come in here, as this panel fits really nice and flat on here, we have that same 1/2 inch gap. Now we're tight on this torsion box. I don't know if you can get under there and see that, but right here on this edge, we have the inner rocker, or the floor extension, and then we have the torsion box. Well, all three of those have to fit tight up against each other. And when they're tight, this is in a 1/2 inch. When it's not tight, and we pull it off, we can get the right body line right here, but we have almost a finger gap underneath of there that we'd have to fill. So we're looking at several different ways to fix this. I think the way I'm leaning towards, once we get everything fit on here and get it where we want in the door jamb, and we got a nice body line right here, we may cut this right here and along the bottom and actually bring this whole rocker out to fit. So we'll probably have to cut it all the way back to the front, and we'll pie in a little piece in here. Now that's one way to fix it. There might be a couple other options once we get closer to doing it that we'll decide. But for right now, that's kind of the direction I think I'm going to go, is cut right along this body line, right along this body line. That way we have a nice tight lip. We'll pull this body panel out and then fill that pie in with another piece of metal. So that's just another little issue you run into when you're putting pickup rockers on these K5s. Now I've seen some guys have online, I've been looking at the pictures, I see a lot of people are doing some welding right here. I don't know if that's them trying to fix it. I don't know if a different panel company fits better than the one that we got. There's always that too, that sometimes some panels fit better than others, depending on which company you're going with. So that's one of the obstacles we ran into, or hiccups. We're just going to fix it and move on. So now we'll probably go ahead and move on and show you a few of these spot welds, how we go ahead and weld these in. We may get into cutting the floor. Chances are we'll probably just show you some spot welds and come back once we get the floor moving. And then we'll see where we're at with that. So you got to have a good ground. If you don't have a ground, you're not going to get a good weld. Now this has got a brace back here. We'll go ahead and pull that back before we fully get this welded off, but I'm going to go ahead and show you a few tacks while you're here. So here we go. Just want to do a nice little tack like that. You don't have to try to make a bead. If you start running a bead, you're going to sink the metal in. And then once you get it kind of tacked all the way along, there's different ways you can do it. Make sure your panel's aligned. You can hold one of these guys on there and just move along there and make sure you got the same roll, same angle the whole way down. Once you get it tacked, then you come back in here and we'll just come right back to one of these tacks and add on to an old one. So here we go. And then here we go. We'll just keep going down the line. Here we go. You just keep adding to the next one. As you go down, eventually you come back and it's all nice and filled in. You can take some of that heat away by rubbing your glove on it. That kind of helps take the heat away, make sure it's not in the hole. That'll put the heat right in your hand. But you should be able to touch the panel not very far away from you welded it. If you can't, you're getting it too hot and you're going to start warping it. So it's not about trying to rush and get it welded as quick as possible. It's about trying to keep this metal as flat and straight as possible without it starting to warp on you and have these other things happen. Now if you come over here real quick, I'll show you a spot weld. I pop these holes in there, and that's like a factory spot weld. You can get this cool little machine here that you stick the metal in, and when you push that, hook it up to the air hose, it pops a hole. So that makes drilling those spot welds really nice and easy. If you see a big hole there, that's because I had to drill one out, so our panel wasn't aligning with our rocker like we just explained, but we'll fill that back in the right way. Now on this other side here is a crimper. Some people like to crimp their panels to where they overlap each other. I used to do that, but I don't like doing that. I've seen where it starts to rust underneath of that crimp. I'd rather butt weld our metal and keep it like that. I notice I get it a lot flatter when we're not crimping it. And then if you're trying to crimp a panel and you're, say, crimping along up an edge like this that's rolling, you can never give it a square crimp anyways that's nice. You end up messing this metal all up. So I don't use a crimper anymore, but I do use the spot welder there, or spot weld puncher. But here, I'll show you how to fill one of these in. You want to come right behind me here, Amber? Just watch right in here. You kind of start in the middle and then you work your way out. So here we go. Now you're going to get a little hotter on that spot weld. but because it's over the edge and around the corner, that shouldn't pull anything into that panel. Should just keep that heat right over that edge and not creep too much over here that it's pulling any of that metal. It should just pull right there. But there you can see you want it as flat as you can get. That way when you come back and grind it down, you got very little to grind before it's just nice and smooth like that again. But if you're cutting out this old panel, you can see right here the factory spot welds. And that's the way that they put them together from the factory. If you want to get this panel off like I did on the back, we showed you before, you got to go through and cut all of these out, and then your panel comes off. If you don't cut those out and you just cut this off and you try to put your panel over the top of this old ledge, you have too much distance there and you end up getting 3-4 panels in there. Messes up your door gap. So that's the right way to do it, is cut it out, get it off, back to your main framework, and then put the spot welds back in like they were from factory. Once your metal's a little hot, if you need to move that edge in anymore to make it nice and flush, it moves really nice once you get it hot. Before you paint, after all your body work's done, you want to come in with some seam sealer and just seam that or seal it up so that way no water gets down in behind any of that. But you don't do that until after the body work's done and you're ready for paint. So that's kind of the process we're doing here on it. We're just going to keep cutting on the floor and moving in that direction. Do you want me to go ahead and cut on the floor some, or?
Sure.
Okay. I guess I can show you how we'll fit that panel in there.
Would it be best if I go that side?
I'll cut right here first. And then maybe we won't actually put it in there. Please don't let me put it in there because I got to put that in there. But we'll get it fit so you can at least see what fitting it looks like. Just having my trouble light, that way I can light where I need it. Now you can see here I already cut off some of this panel last night getting ready. Since we have that floor extension piece in there right here, we don't need this part of the floor that goes all the way down over. So we're going to butt weld right into this one that we already have cut. Now to get that line, what I did is before I welded this floor extension in here, I took this after I cut it and put it on the bottom side of this panel and traced this line. So my line right here should be exactly this line right here. And you just come along the bottom side and set your panel in there. You know, run your trace along there, and that's pretty much all it is. So you can see I got a trace line that came all the way up there. I decided to leave a little extra just to see how we're going to run up underneath that kick panel. But now, since we have good solid metal everywhere in this floor pan was really only rusting up here in that front seam a little bit down at the bottom here. The rest of the seam was totally solid. So we're going to just bring it to the base here of our transmission hump. We're not going to actually replace that lip because sometimes you start getting weird fitment up underneath of there when you replace that whole lip. Now, if we had to, if it was all rotten, we'd just take this off and we'd go all the way over with this new piece, weld in some of those nuts on the bottom so you can, you know, tighten it back up and put your transmission tunnel on. But for this time, what I want to do is I want to be just on this valley right here. That way when you come and look underneath, you're not going to look underneath of this and see a big weld line underneath the floor of this if you're looking at it from the underside. You're going to look underneath of it And you might see it up on this edge, but it'll be a lot harder to see a weld line up on that edge than it will be just out here in the flat.